Those minutes are quite lengthy, so I think I personally would rather read through them before
Sure, that's fine.
17
I'll
pages.
get them to you tomorrow morning.
All right, are we all back together?
I believe so. I don't see Mr. Johnson or Mr. Yi though.
All right, well, let's go on to Betsey Haddad. Max, I think you've got the lead on that one.
Yeah, after some of the board members came for a site visit after the last month's meeting, and after I reviewed the wetlands code a little bit more carefully, the overall impact to the regulated area in terms of square footage falls below the threshold for a major permit application and can be considered a project of minor significance, which can just be permitted through the natural resources officer, which would be myself. And the board agreed that due to that fact, and the folks that had visited the site post last month's meeting, we all agreed there that I could just proceed with permitting the project. So I believe that the applicant is going to be attending the October zoning board meeting to get the final zoning board approvals. And at that point, either I'll issue the permit before they attend that meeting or after they get zoning board approval from the zoning board to do the expansion or the addition to the house.
All right, I had been in conversation with Max and I completely agree with all that. And I'm curious if everybody understands and agrees.
We're talking about the 15 Lake Celeste.
Max?
Yes.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I was
correct.
there with Max. I agree. There's, to me, really no change in the footprint, so to speak.
All right. I see no other discussion, so let's move on to the next one. Wildrick?
Okay, I'm just gonna move over Mr. Wildrick.
James Hartford, I believe, right?
Yeah, I've seen this there before, but now I don't see him. Maybe he's trying to rejoin. He was there before, but now I don't see him.
They just invited us on. I think I unmuted them, so I'm not sure.
Mark, I think Mr. Johnson's here if you want to go back to that one.
Sure.
Okay, sorry. Jump around.
Mr. Johnson is the rep for
Raymond Yi.
E. Okay, sure.
Ask him to unmute.
Mr. Johnson, yep, there we go.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you fine. Good evening.
Great. Good evening.
I'm not actually sure what our conversation is about. I believe where last I recall, you were going to have a meeting, or your client was going to have a meeting with the highway department, and you were going to try to inform us as to when that meeting was going to happen, and we were going to try to join you, but I believe the meeting happened without us, and the highway department was good with your approach, which was based on our recommendations from the original site visits. And,
That's absolutely true.
okay. So has anything changed to this point?
No, we've been waiting for your word. They told us to go ahead as far as they were concerned.
Okay, Max.
And what was that, please?
No, sorry. I was just, Max, are you in on this one any further ahead than I am? Has the applicant come connecting to audio? Max is having technical difficulties.
Oh.
Did you approach Max about actually signing off on the wetlands permit?
Well, yes, but we were told we had to appear at this meeting and get a final approval.
Okay, I understand. As soon as Max connects back in again, we should be able to expedite that.
Okay.
Can I get any technical assistance? Oh, no. All right, maybe can we pause on that one then and see if we can move? Well, I don't know if we should do that because we don't have Max. We're not gonna be any good on the next one either, so. Oh, I see a check mark.
Hey.
There we
Sorry
go.
about that. Yeah, my phone cut out. I missed all of that.
All right, hi, Max. We're
hey.
back to the Mr. Yi's project, and I quickly highlight or summarize where we were at as I recalled it. Have the applicant has spoken to you, and you instructed them to come back into this meeting where we're going to give them a permit, correct?
Yeah, I think the one last remaining item was essentially that the applicant was gonna review what we were comfortable moving forward with the highway department to ensure that they could tie into the town's stormwater system along the road, their catch basin and culverts that would drain off the property. So I think we wanted an update on that meeting, and then if the highway department was in favor of what we were going to allow, then we can issue a permit to move forward.
All right. I mean, my only uncertainty here is we did a site visit. We came up with some suggestions. Then the meeting happened with the highway department and we were not there. So now we are taking the explanation from the applicant that the highway department said it's fine, and we don't actually have sort of a final set of drawings and a final commitment from the highway department. Is there any way to kind of get that in a state that you're comfortable with, Max, that they're actually doing what we sort of discussed from the beginning and that the highway department is on board?
I believe that they sent us a very rough drawing of the installation of a curtain drain. If I'm and correct me if I'm wrong, if the applicant wants to step in here and just clarify that. But I think we have a very rudimentary drawing of what we discussed.
Yeah, I
Is that
recall.
correct?
I do recall that a hand-drawn sketch. It appears, I can't tell if it was done by an engineer or by the applicant, but my concern is that, this is the kind of thing that if there aren't sort of some guardrails put up, especially on that site with that slope and that amount of water that's coming down, things could get out of hand quickly if somebody's not kind of keeping an eye on it.
Yeah, I think
And guardrails? Do you mean physical guardrails or?
No, sir, that was a
Okay, all right. I understand.
Max, I think if you were to take the lead on this one and, require that you are informed well in advance, 24 hours, 36 hours, whatever you deem fit, before they start work, and you've had a chance to just chat with the highway department and assure yourself that they're doing what we said they could do. And then you're informed, as they're proceeding with the work, and you can take a look. Or I know that your workload is pretty heavy. So, I mean, I'd be more than happy to pitch in and take a ride over there and take a look as well while it's going on.
Yeah, no, that's no problem. Can the applicant just summarize for the board and myself how that meeting went with the highway department? Were there any concerns from Carl, or can you update us on that?
No, I just walked the site and, showed him, the drawing and the layout that we have, which is on the site plan. And it's just a drain line that goes around the house and at the street joins into drainage culvert that's already there. And the one that's there is actually not very tightly constructed. So we will tighten all of that up and make sure that it works well for the life of the project. So we didn't get any negative response at all. He was very positive about it. And I don't know what else we can give you in by way of proof, but again, it's a small place. We welcome you to come and meet with us there. We'll call you 24 hours before, and we welcome any inspections you want to do. And it's site drainage to keep water. They say it's a nightmare in the wintertime because the water gets onto the road and then it freezes.
Right, we recall.
So
I can attest to that. Winston Lane in that spot is very icy.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing I want to make sure everybody understands is when we looked at this thing, has anybody else actually been up to the site?
Yeah.
Or let me ask this,
I
who
live right
has
near
been?
there, so I've seen it several times.
Right. It's extremely steep in the back. It's a cliff and it comes down to, lawn area sort of, but still fairly steep, and wraps around the house and terminates at the street. So everything that's coming off the cliff, there's no way anybody's going to do anything about, moving that water anywhere. They're going to be able to cut it off just before it gets to the house in the lawn area. So my suggestion was just to run essentially a curtain drain around the back of the house and bring it over to the culvert. And then there's a bunch of water that comes down to the opposite, away from the house, to the right side, not from the rear, which might be helpful to have a leg of this curtain drain heading in that direction as well. But none of that has been really drawn out. We don't know the depth of the curtain drain. We don't know the size of the pipe. It hasn't been specified that it's a perf pipe. It hasn't been specified that it's got a gravel bed or not, or a filter fabric or anything else. So if I think at least a small level of detail would be helpful.
okay, we can provide that for you, no problem.
And of course, exactly where it's going to go, because I know you're really tight back there. You don't have a lot of wiggle room, and we're trying to accommodate any way we can. So I think you're going to be pretty much right against the back of the deck, and then right along that walkway that comes down to the final approach to the street. Correct?
Correct.
Understood.
And at the back of the house, there's the house and then stone cliff. So there's
Right.
really not much choice where we can dig. So it's pretty much given to us what we can do, but we can give you a more detailed drawing and show you exactly what's up.
Very good.
And we just want to get this done before the weather changes. So
Right. In that regard, to that extent, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, and everybody else, I'm happy to turn this over to Max. He knows what we're trying to accomplish, and if he can keep an eye on it, we're good to go.
Yeah. The only comment I would have is that I know in the past, the town highway department has looked at the volume requirements of that drain. So that, basically we were not exceeding that requirement. So I would just ask that Carl have some kind of dialogue in that discussion as well.
Agreed. And that would go back to the pipe size. If a 24-inch pipe is being put in, or a 4-inch pipe is being put in, that's going to have a little difference.
Right.
Okay, Max. So I guess, can I have a motion to issue a permit based on Max overseeing the whole thing?
So move.
Second,
I'll second it.
all in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, it's unanimous. Okay,
Okay, so I'll just need the final plan, the final detailed drawing sent to the building department, so that we can that I can make my final review before I issue the permit.
okay, sounds good. We'll get it
Okay.
to you as soon as possible because we really want to move on it. And I thank all of you for letting us go.
thank you, sir. Good luck with it.
Don't let us
Thank you
down.
very much.
Okay, Mr. Hartford, Mr. Wildrick.
Hello. Sorry I missed you earlier. I thought we had some time before, so I shoveled some food into my mouth. But good to see you all again. We've got Jena and Jesse here just joining us as well.
Hi.
Good evening.
So if you wouldn't mind, I'm going to share my screen to just kind of put some visuals to this.
Sure.
Great. So if you recall, Jena and Jesse own 2 adjacent lots down on Hudson River Lane. Number 28, which is I'm showing, or no, 30 that I'm showing you now, and 28. They're adjacent to each other. They're shown as two separate parcels, since in the surveys here. But in our drawing here, we're showing the proposed combined lot of the two. And we've recently received approval from the zoning board for our proposed designs for the project. And so that includes several variances for setbacks and lot area coverage. So right here, you're seeing the roof of the structure. We've got a garage that's attached to the house, and actually the house stepping down in two places in a similar footprint to the original two structures that we're removing. So they're all new structures. Number 30 was, and Jenna and Jesse, please correct me if I get the numbers mixed up. Number 30 was flooded during Sandy, and it came pretty close to getting number 28 as well. So we're raising the floor level of the house so that there's no occupiable space below the flood elevation plus a couple feet. So we're raising it, I think, 3 feet from the existing, so that we're up higher than that. One of our sections shows that as well. So here we've got basically two halves on the ground floor to allow for the use of the boat ramp and kind of a natural beach that's there. It's one of the few natural features along that stretch in Hudson River Lane. And it actually gives a little bit of relief to tides and actually some flooding mitigation too, because the water is able to drain back out comfortably. It's got two seawalls. The one on the north site is in pretty bad shape. It's a gabion wall that's showing a lot of deterioration and probably wasn't built that well to begin with. So we're proposing to replace that, and we've got an application and engineering in front of the Army Corps of Engineers and the DEC currently. So the idea is that the house steps down on, lands on the land on two different foundations essentially, but then bridges across. So here on the second floor, you can see how this kind of great room here is bridging across, and it's glazed so that kind of has a light and area view through. But it's a single family residence. We've got a portion of it is green roof. We're considering, we intend to put solar panels on here, and we are interested in the idea of putting a green roof on it, but we have to kind of look at budget and also how much solar we need to make this a source net zero house. And so these are the elevations, what it looks like. And you can also see here, the red is zone AE base, flood elevation at 7 feet. So, and then Hurricane Sandy clocked in at 9.4, the blue line, and we're proposing to raise it, I don't remember what the dimension is, but a little bit higher than Sandy. And if you recall, we were also proposing a swimming pool that's on that north projection of the property. I'm going to go back to the site plan here. And so the swimming pool is here. What we want to do, we heard your concerns about keeping chemicals out of the Hudson River, and I completely agree with that. So the intent is to use a natural bio-based pool, 100% biological activity that is basically benevolent cultures that cleanse the water naturally. Ordinarily or traditionally, these were done with basically like a simulated wetland garden, but now there are kind of methodologies to package that into a sand bed so that the same organisms can live in the sand, and the water is filtered through that sand, and the bacteria activate and cleanse the nutrients out of the water to purify it. So it's essentially drinking water when it's done with that process. And yeah, I think that's about that. And I just want to go back to the thoughts that this is intended to be a certified passive house. We're working towards that goal. We haven't started the energy modeling yet because we just wanted to get through the boards a little further so that we have a little more certainty on the shape and the outcome. There's a fair amount of glazing, but we're looking at deep overhangs to offset overheating from the sun. And that should probably work to our benefit in our energy performance. There will be no fossil fuel use on this site. We are removing the 2 oil tanks from both structures. We are eliminating propane as a backup power source for the generator. The generator would go away. The idea is that we would use solar panel connected battery storage so that all of the energy demands are met through the battery system in case of power failure. But taking it one step further, also using the battery system to lower our peak demand. So we're taking less from the grid, even when everything's fine and running. So so we're minimizing the impact on the greater environment.
How long would that run, James? Like what is is that days that we're talking about or hours?
That would really require some feedback from the battery system designer, and we've done that for a passive house up on the Catskill River in the town of Catskill. They have power backup for critical systems. It's not 100% power, but critical systems for 3 days. And usually, just like the past storm, you get 1, 2, pretty miserable days, and then you get brilliant, spectacular weather, sunny weather afterwards. So usually that's sufficient. And also, battery or generators usually have enough propane or diesel to run for 3 days. So that's kind of I think the targeted goal in general for that.
Okay, I was just trying to have an idea.
Yeah. And let's see, some renderings of what it's hopefully going to look like. We're raising the grade a little bit. It's like a 2% gradual grade increase, which actually matches the neighboring property, so that it sits more naturally in the landscape rather than having it projecting too high visually. But it also keeps the water chestnuts from gathering in the front yard and things like that.
So James, how much fill are you adding into that property? And when you said you're matching the neighbors, I mean, obviously there was 2 different parcels, 2 different houses. So how are you, mating up to the adjacent neighbors so that you're not raising this house so high that now you're out of the floodplain, but that all the water then pours into the neighbors?
That's a great question. So the neighbors to the north here, the soil around the house itself is bermed up so that it looks like a gradual natural grade change. We would match that. The neighbors to the south, I think it starts to descend further down, and that's the question we should look at more carefully in terms of what that potential impact is next door. And we'll also do a calculation on the quantity of soil that we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, because this is obviously tricky to remediate, all these homes here that are in the floodplain like this, and of course you all want to go up high, but as soon as you start building the ground up, I mean, I know on Long Island instead of that they go on stilts, but then you're starting to block view shed, in people's views as well. So, I mean, we really kind of with this project need to balance the view and the impact of raising and then pouring water onto a neighbor property. So it's definitely tricky. and I know this house, just in general, this property, I think this has been behind us, before us several times with prior designs and things like that. So I think we want to make sure that we take, a good look at what's going on here. I know you got the ZBA approval, but what did the ZBA approve? Did they approve this design as shown here with the, footprint of the foundation? And is that foundation in the exact footprint as the prior foundation, or is this a new construction with a new foundation, or is
Yes.
it grandfathered with the old foundation?
No, it's all new. It was approved as an all new foundation. So we're raising the two existing houses and the two existing garages, and our increase in coverage is in the 0.03% range or something like that. It's a very minimal increase in impervious coverage. So that's it was approved on that basis. It's essentially this design, but we pushed the design aesthetic further. We did elevations and sections and floor details for them. We've actually shrunk the building footprint a little bit from what was approved, so we're slightly smaller than actually what the ZBA had approved us for. Yeah, but it's essentially the same design as what they had approved.
Okay, so like those cantilevers, like, see, I look at that over there and I say, well, like the cantilever that you got there where it's like a deck, I guess it is. And then there's some cantilever like on towards the right when I'm looking at my screen, that's actually living space. So that they're aware that that is outside the foundation, that's okay with them?
Yeah, we were showing cantilevers previously. It's kind of slightly rearranged, but there were cantilevers shown, decks and sun shades that were on the design previously. On this side, we're actually in 2 feet from what the approved design was. We do overhang the setback, I think about a foot with this design, but that I believe is permissible, for roof overhangs and this sort of code.
So the ZBA approved that you're overhanging over the setback lot requirement?
Let me clarify that is, let me confirm that that's
Yeah, we didn't
permissible.
level of design when we saw the ZBA, and so that was a little detail that was added after, but we think it's within code. We just need to confirm and respond back.
So, okay, I'm just trying to understand where we are, because this project's been before us, before and other generations, prior.
Well, let me stop you right there, Mark. This is our second meeting with you.
Hey, Bob, clarify that it's you speaking, that's not me.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Okay.
I'm sorry, Bob. Yeah, Bob. This is the first time you're seeing a design from us. There was a previous applicant, a previous design, and I know that that was something that was reviewed before, but this is an all-new client, all-new project here.
No, okay.
That's not
fair
exactly-
enough. I remember the septic, we had the conversation about the peat system and things like that, so yeah, no problem. I mean, I've seen the prior, drawings from like January, February timeframe. That's what I was looking at. So.
Right.
But okay, no problem. But again, I guess I'm just trying to understand the process, so in our case here, there's things that we're, as a conservation board, we're interested in. Obviously, the pool is going to be one thing we'll have a conversation about. We talked about the septic back in February. And I appreciate that you put the, a good design there with the peat system, right? So that still stays, right?
Right. Yep. Septic
Okay.
over here.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And so that's good. But I guess the other purview or the other aspect is always the kind of the view shed of the neighbors and the balancing, of the impact to the neighbors. So, I really want to see kind of a good understanding of like, what is the current level of the house, and forgive me, like I can't really speak for all the properties around it, like what they can see today. Can they see mountains or bridges and things like that? but like, what would be the impact in the future? And, like, is that necessary to have like a walkway in the front there, blocking with a hard wall there? Or can you just take that wall down and then just have the deck, but then just have like a railing so that it's not a hard wall block,
Yeah, well, it is glass. The bridge area is all glass. And I also want to point out that the height was not an issue. We are conforming with code on the height, so was never a variance issue.
And I'd love to add too, we know our neighbors very well. We're very close physically, and I think just even with the pandemic have gotten closer, and we absolutely wanted to make sure that they were on board. We met with the neighbors on both sides. Specifically the neighbor to the south, we're actually reseating the house further back, so that will improve their view. We're also going to take the fence down along, or replace the fence with a transparent fence. There's trees that were planted by the previous owner that blocks their view. So we really are going to open that up, they're an invasive species, and we want to take those down so that they can see better. And we know how important that is. The only thing that would be a huge difference is to the neighbors on the north. The house is going up to 2 stories where it was 1, but it's within the footprint, and further receded another 2 feet from what we had approved. So they were very happy about that. We spoke with them about that. And also something someone asked earlier about the drainage to the Materos on the south. The engineers working on our seawall had mentioned that when they do the grade, they can actually put drainage points within the yard that helps drain and create like a drain line that brings it back out. So it would never, hopefully never, flood the neighbors on that side. And as James mentioned, on the north, we're elevating to match their grade. So we're hoping to stay in lockstep with our neighbors as much as possible, because we live too close to each other physically to not have everyone feel happy. We really want to maintain those friendships and relationships, and we care about them.
Right.
So I just want to say that.
Sounds like he agrees too, or she.
Yes, my son very much wants to be friends with the grandkids, at least to the south. So.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, again, like I just, I look at the design and I see, it going up, raising, getting out of the floodplain, and concern. I mean, it's really hard. I did look, it took some time today to look at it, try to understand like what exactly you're meaning from coming up from sea level, and then how much fill that's going to be. And yes, maybe you're in the letter of the law, within that variance of, or the town requirement of 40 feet or whatever, but, I just don't know how much fill you're adding there. So, and where that first point starts. So, yeah, I just concerned there's a layer of fill, then you got the foundation, then you got the house, then you've got the second story, and you've got the solar panels on the top. And then you've got these overhangs that extend away from the property. So I think you said you moved the property back a little bit, but then you also are extending forward, which
Well, basically, there's a garage
10
currently.
feet or something.
Sorry.
It looked like it was 10 feet overhanging. I'm not sure from the house to that, like the other view that you had there, that gray wall there, or the brown wall, the one facing the house. Like I can see that overhang really well in the other view. But yeah, that like, how far is that? What's that distance there?
That's an 8-foot cantilever.
8 foot.
I think if I can just
Right.
and speak to Rob's point, I think there's a lot of moving parts with this application, and our town engineer just sent the town today a notice that you guys are going to also be in front of the planning board as well. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
I think what would be really helpful, at least from my perspective, and the board can jump in here, is that if we could get a site plan that was as complete as you feel you're going to be presenting to the planning board as well, so that, because they're going to be referring this project back to us essentially to compile all of these comments on a full application that you're going to be presenting them. And a lot of what we're discussing here should be written into a narrative and assessed through the seeker process and part of the environmental assessment form. And that way, a lot of these questions about the design of the house and all of the mitigation components that you're including will be in one place that we can actually refer back to and critique. It's a little bit difficult for me to look at just the floor plans here and then kind of pick out maybe some of the things that are highlighted in your minds that really make this like you know, a special project in terms of its conservation principles to the site. So I want to make sure highlighted for the board to review and allow them to you know, compare this change and justify the change with, you know, application in the future as well. And I noticed there too that you also in your cover letter stated that you have applications or to the DEC and Army Corps with race, and those applications would also be reviewed by us as well. So those are components of the project that we'd also like to review and basically see what you're transmitting to those conservation agencies as well. So I just jump in with those.
Okay, so we'll get you the applications that were submitted by race. It's essentially the same package. We're meeting with the planning board on Thursday evening, and this is essentially the same package that we've submitted to you as well.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, if there are any major changes in the EAF that was submitted to us originally that will be submitted to the planning board, then those should also be transmitted to this board, because that narrative component, all the different things that you had spoken about, all the positives that are going to be affecting the site, all the changes to the site via, you know, the addition of fill, all those things are going to need to be included in that document, and those are the things that we're going to evaluate. You know.
Okay, well, maybe it's premature then to talk about that, but I guess I'm just, you know, trying to go down the narrative of where we would be influencing, obviously the pool and kind of the view shed, you know, and then obviously it's critical about how, you know, how this property is raised and things like that. And, you know, having seen some of the construction down there, I kind of went down that way on a hike a couple weeks ago and saw the building that was going up on the end there. It seems like it's kind of, I don't know. It doesn't seem like what I thought it would be going back when we looked at that one in the past. So I just want to make sure that we're checking all the boxes here.
Hey, James, can I ask you a question? I've just been listening quietly to this whole conversation. I just want to ask a question about the roof and the drainage from the roof. I know there was a potential cistern on one side.
Right, yeah.
And, you know, to me, I said it to you last time, and this is the coolest house in the world. And you know, the environmental benefits to the way the house itself is being built, and all electric and the panels and passive, everything else, to me outweighs, this is just my personal view, it outweighs a lot of these other issues. And I think if the neighbors are all fine with the views, and as long as the flooding issues that Bob brought up are dealt with, you know, upfront, that this is a home run. I really am curious about the roof runoff, because it's a lot of surface area. And can you, I've had this question asked of me and I never know the answer. In some towns, decking is considered impervious. And can you tell me what the real rule is?
Well, the rule according to the town code is that if it's I think it's 1/8 of an inch at some dimension, if the gap in the decking is 1/8 of an inch or greater, it's considered pervious. If it's tighter, it's considered impervious. So that's pretty much how that works out. Sadly and strangely, green roofs seem to not count. It's a little bit of a punt in the code on that. And that, you know, honestly, that, you know, weighed in on the decision to not include more green roof, where we have a kitchen garden above the garage, and the intent is to be able to grow vegetables and herbs. but the rules matter, and so when they're not helpful in making design decisions like that are also beneficial, some things get mixed. But the intent is to include rainwater harvesting in cisterns, so that that's both beneficial for on-site irrigation, but also stormwater mitigation. So it's a double win for us, to do that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm actually coming from, I'm sorry. Go
No,
ahead,
Mark, I was just gonna, oh, go ahead. I had a
No,
quick
please,
question after you.
please go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to ask a clarification. So you were saying, James, green roofs don't count in the code as roof towards what? Do you mind just explaining that for educational purposes?
Right. So the absorptivity of green roofs are discounted in the code. So they don't count towards your impervious. Well, they don't factor into your impervious surface calculations. So so the green roof is seen as the same thing as an asphalt roof or a concrete driveway.
So it is considered as though the water is not flowing through the roof, is being retained on that square footage until such time as it overflows, and so it's considered impervious.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So
now, it's not the same thing as a fully functioning soil profile, of course, but it still does reduce the amount of runoff.
I mean, I'm thinking
heat island effect too.
Right. They're fantastic. I mean, I'm thinking in terms of my own experience on 3 of my clients' homes down county in this latest hurricane, and the amount of water that comes off a roof and comes up out of the ground combined, they just got destroyed.
Yeah.
So in this house, I mean, you've got the advantage. You've got the river right there. All the water can be dumped into the river, and it's essentially clean water. It's overflow from a rain garden, or I should say the green roof. It's overflow from what are the roofs? Tar and chip, rubber?
We didn't get that far. I do like using TPO, so it's basically inert. It's a thermoplastic, but it's it's not so it's not asphaltic, so it doesn't off gas.
Right, and in terms of picking up oil and byproducts or whatever and running out into the river, that's not a factor.
Exactly. Yeah.
So there is a tremendous, I want the rest of the board to understand my point, is that there's a tremendous amount of water that's going to come off of the structure, and it's going to go somewhere. So the question is it being dumped in one spot? Is it going to cause a rut? Is it being diffused? Is it, it's obviously James is thinking about that. I'm just curious what the thoughts are. Where is it going to go?
I really appreciate that, Mark. So we'll develop that further and more deeply, so that we can really, give you a satisfactory answer, and hopefully something that helps set a good precedent.
Thanks, James. I really look forward to this. I understand what Max was saying. They're going to do a joint meeting with us to explain that pool. It's really interesting. It'd be fascinating to see how that all works.
Great. Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, I think beyond the pool, I think there's just so many components to this that I don't want, and James, I don't want you to have to keep running back and forth with like a laundry list of things between 2 different boards at 2 different meetings. So if we can try to get this all in one place, with all of these comments synthesized together, and typically we'll do that in a memo form eventually. So to you, that way you can nail out kind of like a laundry list of all these items that we're all talking about. So
Great.
I just want that in mind. I feel like I don't want anything to get lost in the shuffle here.
Great. Yeah.
Sorry,
Did I hear that there's a joint meeting between the conservation board and the planning board to discuss?
It's the memo that Ron sent. They're gonna send out it's part of the State Environmental Quality Review Act. It's just a part of the generic process. They're gonna ask for either a coordinated review or the planning board to be the lead agent on the project. So that's something I guess that will be coming down the line for us when you go to the meeting. So that's probably going to be one of the first actions the planning board takes, and then they're going to look to the conservation board for their comments on all of these different items that are coming up now. And if the conservation board agrees that the planning board is going to be the lead agency on the project, that's going to be the main group of folks you're going to be talking to once they make a determination of significance on the project, then the conservation board can legally issue a permit based on all of that discussion and review that's going on. So in some ways it is a joint meeting, or it could be. More likely it'll be comments back and forth between us all.
Great. Very good. Thanks.
So I have a question, just, it's really more curiosity than anything else. James, or maybe the landowners, what did these two properties look like after the last storm?
Pretty much unscathed.
Yeah. We were pretty,
Wow.
yeah, we actually need a new roof we live at 30 currently. 28 is not inhabitable. It was actually destroyed during Sandy and they never rebuilt it. So it's just been sitting empty. So we live at 30, and even that, we've had a lot of rain and that has caused leaks in the roof, and we didn't hardly have any problems at all. I mean, it was actually, we felt very lucky. It wasn't bad at all.
Wow. That's
I know
incredible.
Breath every time there's a big storm, because we know what happened during Sandy. We know, it's not getting any better with climate change, and it's kind of like, oh, we hope that this isn't another bad one. But yeah, that one was okay, thankfully.
Just for orientation, this is a view from the river looking east. This is sitting on the same footprint as number 30. It's actually receded. We're pushing it back from the river a little bit, and that was out of concern for the view for the maps.
It from all sides, right? Except the towards the railroad track where we connected it to the garage, but we reseeded it in the middle too, right?
Right. Yeah, and so this is 28. Currently 28. The intent is this becomes one combined lot, so we're extinguishing the property line in the middle, and so number 28 currently is uninhabitable.
Right. So the main that floor on 28, and then the crossover, that connects them in the middle.
It looks like an amazing design. It's really impressive.
Thank you.
We're really hopeful and excited.
All right, well, I guess, Jan, I see you had a.
I just add, James, I think kudos to you and the owners. This is a breathtaking project. I think it's a wonderful development for Philipstown because it embodies so many of the things that all of our boards focus on and are increasingly worrying about in terms of development, the impact on the environment, conservation. It really touches all of the bases and is integrated into a sort of eye-poppingly attractive and well thought out design format. So I'm very excited to see the progress of it.
Thank you. And bird glass. We forgot to mention take care of the birds because there's a lot more glass. We love all the views of this area are so exquisite, but we want to make sure the birds are okay. So there's James found some really cool glass that allows them to see the glass. So we're excited about that too. I don't think we mentioned that, so I wanted to.
Right, yeah.
Good job.
I'm going to echo Jan's comment and just that how exciting it is and how important it is to have living examples of this sort of building in Philipstown to be a model for others in the community as we head into the future. So, very excited about that.
Thank you.
Was that an agreement there that I just heard?
That's the future of Philipstown.
His first word, maybe his only word, is boat, because
A lot of boats.
said choo-choo for a while because there's trains everywhere too, but that receded. So we're just boat, everything's boat now. So I think that's what you heard.
Yeah. All right, well,
I
I look
just
forward
had a
to the
question
next
for
one, I guess.
James I wanted to ask, and it's just more educational about the green roof.
Mhm.
So I understand the concept of the green roof, and I think it's a really great idea, and it's certainly a great use of space instead of having just a black tar roof there, for sure. But I guess I'm just trying to understand the concept of, you know, so you're growing something up there, it's got some roots in there, it's got a nutrient system and, you know, some kind of soil. Is it typically just dirt, or is it a specialized like low weight soil, or like is hydroponic, or, you know, like, I'm just trying to understand like what really it is, you know?
These are great questions. So this roof would have an intensive green roof, and so that is, you know, with soil, with nutrients, and, you know, and a minimum of well, 8 to, you know, really to infinity deep. Here we'll probably do probably 8 to 14 inches deep in the soil there, so that there's enough room for roots and also water retention. The upper roof would have an extensive green roof system, which is actually nutrient lean, and we will be using sedums and that sort of thing. And the intent is that sedums don't require as much irrigation, so or any irrigation once they're established. So we're not, you know, dumping good clean water on a roof essentially, and so that the soil itself doesn't hold a lot of water, but it has a cup system integrated into the design, so that there are cups that retain water, and that the evaporation of that water below the root system is what replenishes the soil above and water supplies. You can see an example of that on Manitoga's green roofs.
I'm sorry, I'm not.
Purpose of a green roof?
Yeah, insulation.
Yeah, in terms of water management and plant growth, it's you know, it's a little bit different there. Yeah, generally we don't consider the insulative properties of green roofs when we're designing a passive house, because the amount of insulation in the building envelope is really doing all of that heavy work. But a green roof over a conventional roof system actually reduces the heat stress that roof membranes go through, so it increases the longevity of the roof as well. So then you're doing less tear-offs and less, there's less waste involved.
How long will that roof typically last?
Well, a green roof can last indefinitely. If, you know, of course, the maintenance issue is you've got to keep trees from rooting in it, and the roots can create that kind of harm if it's not properly designed. There are barriers to keep, you know, there are root barriers designed specifically to keep roots from harming membranes. But there are green roofs in Europe that are well over 100 years old. There are some roofs in Iceland that are 500 years old. So, you know, it's technology that, you know, has actually quite a long track record.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Sounds like the Philipstown code may need some updating in terms of green roof support and encouragement.
Yeah. I was thinking the same thing, Jan, you know, with all that pummeling runoff, especially in the village, just all going downhill.
Yep.
Crystal, I would love to work with you on that.
Yes, definitely.
So, but I guess it also, James, would be a fine balance, right? I mean, like, you know, obviously it's an engineering solution, right? So I mean, there is some capacity to take the water in, but obviously it's going to be somewhat limited. It's not like, you know, ground where you have unlimited capacity. So it could be fairly limited, you know.
It's, you know, it will handle, you know, and I used to be super steeped in it when I was working as a building envelope consultant in New York City years ago. So I don't remember all the math on it, but an extensive green roof would handle something like 90% of the rain events. So it's not 90% of all rain, but the 90% of rain events are small enough that it would be absorbed on the roof itself.
Right. Okay.
Wow.
But then it's designed into it is an overflow system and a capture system, so that then whatever is in excess then would go into the cistern.
Yeah, very cool.
Very cool.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the great Poobah? All right, James, thank you very much.
I really appreciate your time tonight.
Onward and upward.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, let's see, where are we now? Lesser and Park on 53 Phillipsbrook.
I'm just moving them over, Mark.
Thank you.
Okay. Hello, my name is Tim Rasick. I'm representing the Park Lesser residents. Sorry, my video just clipped out, so I don't know if I'm supposed to be speaking now.
You're good, Tim.
Okay, thanks. Thank you for your time. So our project's not quite as complicated as the last one, which was very nice to see. There's an existing house with a single-story garage. The garage is in ill repair, so we're looking to take it down and rebuild it and extend the footprint a little bit. And so this hatched area is the extension of the footprint. It's a total of 240 square feet. It falls within the 100 foot buffer from Phillipsbrook. The issue is that we have a very steep slope that's behind the house here. So we wanted to create a little bit more room for the cars to get in to the garage. And I can show you some site photos.
Timothy, just a second. Can you share your screen with us?
Oh, sorry. Sorry, my bad.
No worries.
There we go. Let's see. Can you see my?
Yep.
Okay. Sorry. So I'll start over. The dark gray is the existing house. This is the existing garage here with the entrance connector. The garage is in ill repair, so we're looking to take that down and rebuild it. We would be extending the footprint in this hatched area that you see here. It's a total of 240 square feet. Go out 5'8" in this direction and 3'4" in the opposite in this direction here. We wanted to create more room so it's easier for the cars in to the space, and we have some constraints with the site in terms that there's a very steep slope behind the house here. I can show you some site photos. This is the garage as it is today. This is the slope behind. So we're looking to extend out a little bit in this direction and then a little bit in this direction. And let me just go. So on this side, we would be extending to roughly about here. And we'll be creating we'll take the runoff and divert it into a rain garden, which would be situated right here, so the water doesn't run directly onto the site as it does now. And that's essentially the project.
I will unmute myself. I assume that you are aware of the immediate questions that are going to come of this, that because it's within the buffer, we really push back hard against any kind of increase in the footprint within the buffer. You are aware of that?
We are. I don't know if we're doing anything that really has an impact on the water course, because as I said, we're just going essentially 3 feet this way and then 5 feet out. I would urge the board to come out to the site to understand the impact, if any, that this addition has.
Right. Let me say it's a death by 1,000 cuts. You know, our board is asked on constantly, you know, small additions into the footprint, and I guess where we've settled now is, unless it's absolutely essential, it's a hard no. There have been applicants who have provided such an enormous amount of remediation or beneficial things. And there was a client that asked for a pool recently, which is enormous. They moved the pool, they removed part of their old septic system, and they're going to replace it with a new septic system. They're completely upgrading this area that's a wetland that's adjacent to their property. They're exchanging a tremendous amount of benefit for whatever minimal impact, and I won't say minimal in that case, I'm just referring to your reference that this impact will be minimal, but they're offsetting it. So I would suggest we would be happy to come out and take a look at the site, but you should be prepared to offer, like a 4-to-1, whatever impact you're asking for, come back with 4 times as much benefit to the environment, to the wetlands, to the downstream, a bigger rain garden. I can't make too many suggestions. You can look at some of our previous approvals to see what kind of things we like to see, but that is what I suspect my fellow board members are going to be looking for.
Okay. I don't know if I made it clear though, that we are going to take the runoff from the new roof and divert it into a rain garden in the front.
I did hear that. Where is the existing septic?
The existing septic, I believe, is in the back.
Outside the buffer?
Yes.
Or is
well, no, it may be inside. It may be, sorry, it may be in the buffer, but it's not, it's on this side of the house.
All right. And all the existing roof, when you say you're bringing the runoff from the roof, you're referring to the entire garage roof, not just the new area. You're building the rain garden to absorb sufficient capacity to take the entire new roof, not just what you've expanded?
The entire, yes. So it would take the runoff from this portion.
Right.
Yes.
So a suggestion is build it big enough to take the runoff from the entire house or some of the other impervious areas. I'm not sure that is not going to make a huge difference in the size of the rain garden, but it's something that's an offering in the right direction, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
And that's really all I have to say. My fellow board members, please jump in. All right. Well, then if there are no other comments, I think, Timothy, if you could coordinate with Max and he'll try to set us up for a site visit.
Okay.
All right, sir. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Let's see, we are now on to, where are we? I wish I could read my writing. Ashley, right, Max? Intermittent water course violation.
Yeah, why don't we save that for just because it's just a brief update from myself on that. If we want to get an update from Cloud Bank on that project and where they.
Jonathan Rose and Beth Evans.
I'm just moving them over.
Hi, this is Jonathan. And Beth, are you on?
I am. Good evening.
Great.
Good evening. Max mentioned that you had an update for us.
We do. We finished the dredging project as we had promised in mid-July. We didn't have any more discharge of turbid water. We had updated Max on our turbidity readings, which were below the threshold for turbid water. And from what I hear from Jonathan and Deanna, the pond is clearer than it's ever been, and they're very happy. It's back to being full thanks to the storms, and we are waiting for the sediments to dry so that we can distribute them in accordance with the DEC permit after November 1st.
All right, thank you, Beth. Max, do you have any comments or questions?
No, that was really it. I was just also curious about the next steps with the sediment and all of that. So if you can just keep us updated, the conditions are right for you to start spreading that. That'd be great.
We will certainly do that. We anticipate that will be shortly after November 1st, assuming that we don't have any more major storms. The material should be nice and dry and ready to be spread. We have ordered the seed mix for the meadow area so that as soon as the material is spread, hopefully we can get it seeded and mulched and ready for germination next spring.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a quick question. I know
Sure.
we talked about it at one of the meetings. I know we've had several, but I think one of the things that was important, especially since this clay barrier was kind of, so difficult to understand, you were going to map, you mapped it. I know you already did the work and you had some drawings, but can we somehow put that into the, the master plans or the package that would get passed down from generations to generations, so they don't have to go through the same exercise and kind of understand that there's some risk there?
We will certainly do that. It appears that when the pond was built in the early 1900s, bentonite clay was much more available than it might be today. And we will certainly make sure that our findings are documented for future owners of the property.
That'd be great.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
Good night.
Good night.
All right, Max, you want to do Ethan Drive? I think that's the last thing.
Yeah, it's just a brief update. The homeowner or the developer that owned the property essentially brought the property up to a point where he could sell it, and during that process, we had a permit on the property it issued a few years ago because of a small intermittent water course that ran through the west side of the parcel and eventually drained into a DEC regulated stream in Continental Village along the Westchester Putnam County border. And then he ended up during the whole kind of maybe last few steps of cleaning up the property, he filled the intermittent water course with gravel. At that point, I sent a notice of violation to the developer and told him that he had to remove the gravel and replant the area that he planted with grass seed. So he removed the gravel and brought the water course back up to basically what it had looked like before. And that was all by hand with shovels, and essentially that's where we stand now. And he got his COs, and I believe the house is sold now. So that was kind of handed off to the building department after that was brought to my attention. So,
all right, Max, let me ask you about the Swanson maintenance agreement. You saw that, I assume it has to get. Is that the same one as the other Pete system down on Manitou?
Correct. Yeah.
So that
it's the same system, but it's a different contractor that's Beatty and Watson's handling the design of that project, not the same engineering firm that the Hudson River Lane project was utilizing.
Is it still one of those unitized systems? Is it, they're just bringing in cubes of peat?
Yeah, it's the same system. Yeah.
All right, but I mean, the maintenance agreement, is it verbatim? I mean, I'm feeling like since these systems may be more common, that we should require the exact same thing from everyone and not start reinventing the wheel every time.
Yeah, the main thing that's binding in that agreement to having that consistency is that we're requiring them to utilize a certified professional to evaluate the system annually and make sure it's functioning and submit us a report, which is essentially what the Hudson River Lane property, what we required there.
I mean, I'm sorry, Max, go ahead.
that will also be deeded into the county records as well, based on what you guys saw.
Right. I mean, is this isn't exactly, is this verbatim, like literally a carbon copy of the one that was done for Manitou, or is it a new one?
No, no, it's not verbatim, because I don't believe that the Manitou Marsh one is deeded into their record, into the county record.
Got it.
But in
So,
standard of inspection, yeah, in terms of standard of inspection, it should be the same.
all right, yeah, I know that was the main thing, is you can't, no self-inspection, that just didn't seem to make any sense. Got to be third-party certified inspector somehow. And the fact that it's now deeded in is fantastic. So this thing, I think, however, well, I'm just curious, first of all, who has to sign off on it? Is that you or Greg?
Well, both. So the
Yep.
board, I believe, I have to get a refresher and see if we approved the conditional permit, or we're still waiting for them to come back with all the remaining items that we had asked for. But yeah, once we sign off and issue a permit to them, then they would be issued a building permit by Greg. So that's kind of.
I did not realize that we were remiss in that. I thought we had already kind of let them go ahead last meeting, but so
Yeah, we need to get back and see if we issued a conditional permit or not. I haven't issued anything yet based on their final plans or anything like that. That would the main that may, like you said, be a conversation where you know, this maintenance agreement was the last piece, kind of a thing. So
all right, so if that's the case, is it all right if I'm asking the board, is it, if that's the case, if this was the last piece, are we all okay with letting Max go ahead and issue the permit?
I'm fine.
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
Subject to two questions about the agreement.
Yes, sir.
Sure.
First, Max, does the town maintain a calendar-based ledger of all agreements of this type with the date by which the report is due, so that the town instantly knows if a report has not been submitted on time?
We don't, but we can do that. I think these two projects are the only ones at this point that we really require that. We've had that. The only thing that would be similar in the past is when we had maintenance agreements on planting projects, and all of those permits are closed, I believe, at this point. So we can reinstate that. I'm sure Cheryl can set something up.
Yeah, I think for perpetual maintenance agreements, which I agree, to Mark's point, we may be seeing more of these, whether they're peak-based systems or something else. And I think it's important that from day one, the town maintain an organized record of them and have a system so that if it doesn't come in, you know, say within 30 days of the due date, a non-compliance letter automatically goes out. And my second question is, should we insert some enforcement provision in here to basically say what happens to the homeowner if the homeowner simply doesn't do it?
Absolutely great idea, Jen. Absolutely great idea.
Would you like to include that on the agreement that they
Yes.
signed?
Yes.
Okay.
Revocation of the certificate of occupancy.
I think that's a great incentive.
That'll get your attention.
Okay.
The other one that we did is the pool. You know, that's a prime example. There was a lot of maintenance that was going to have to go into that, and they agreed to put it in the deed. I think that we should require that we see an updated copy of the deed when that has been inserted. In all these cases.
I think we have a lot of these.
They haven't come back to the town at all with any additional information on that project. So that laundry list that I had written out for them of all the items that we had discussed, we haven't gotten any new updated plans. So when all that comes in, I can forward you that stuff as that comes in too, just so you're aware. But yeah, I think a calendar is a really good idea. I think we have permit renewals that happen every year on bigger projects. that we can keep track of that way too. And it'll help the town stay on top of some of our financial commitments as well, from homeowners. So that's an added plus.
That's a great idea.
And I'd put a tickler note in your calendar, Max, on the pool, because I suspect you may have to contact them to get it.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right, probably.
Is this the pool that was approved during the last meeting, the meeting that I missed? Or is that what you're talking about?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, because I was reading the notes in the minutes about that, and that there's a requirement for them to use a certain type of, the system can't be chlorinated. It has to be, how is that going to be enforced? Because you can switch from a saltwater system to a chlorinated system to this system to that system from season to season, and who's actually going to enforce that?
Yeah, that is a really good question. It goes in with, all the other enforcement things. We have no teeth, somebody could go out and see that they had changed it, but what do we do? I mean, I think
well, who's even going to go out and see that they changed
Yeah.
it? I mean, we don't have somebody who can wander around to everybody's pool and check their,
right.
chemicals are in them. So I worry when we make concessions. I know this is this is Monday morning quarterbacking on my part, but I wonder when we make concessions that, allow for something that maybe we're not that comfortable with to begin with, just to kind of, I don't know, to meet in the middle with a homeowner, that we make sure that we've got that enforcement or there's some sort of
Great point.
teeth, in terms of the spirit of what we're trying to achieve.
There should be an annual third-party certification submitted to the town by the homeowner. And there ought to be something, I don't guess you can forfeit a certificate of occupancy for a pool, but if we can come up with an equivalent, that ought to happen automatically upon failure to provide the certificate within 30 days of the due date.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, that goes on that calendar that you suggested. It pops up every year. These are the ones that need to be contacted. I'm not sure that every year I don't know what it would cost. Like, for instance, that property, you'd have to have someone who was a horticulturalist to go out and make sure that all the plantings around that lowland are all surviving in the correct percentages. And then you'd have to check that the pool is still being chlorinated or not chlorinated. And by the way, chlorinated, a saltwater pool, our understanding was when we were educated a little bit, in essence, it's still using chlorine. You're just disassociating sodium and chlorine in the salt, and you're left with chlorine. So,
right.
The attempt was made to address when the pool overflows, where is the water going? Is there some place where it's going to not directly go into the pond on one side or the wetland on the other? And when you drain down the pool to do whatever to repairs, that there are some restrictions in place saying what you should do in order to do that. And I have a client down in Scarsdale. I mean, you have 50 people around, everybody can watch what you do. And we got to the end of his hot tub and he stated to me, he said, I'm not going to drain this hot tub into that special drain that they made me. I'm just dumping it on the ground. Like, okay, sir, you can do whatever you want, but Westchester County requires that you dump the water where you're supposed to dump it. I took a little convincing. I think he's convinced now, but to your point, MJ, the people will do whatever the heck they want to do, so how do you enforce it? I don't know. It's very frustrating.
I was just going to say, to Jan's point though, or Jan's strategy, there's a psychological benefit to contacting people. If you get an email from the town or you get a letter from the town and it says, it's time for you to blah, 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 whatever it is, or we're waiting for your report,
Mm-hmm.
please submit in 30 days or 45 days. there is a psychological kind of weight to that does not exist presently. So I think even for that, even if it's, you know, partially theater, it's better than what we have now.
Agreed.
Never underestimate the importance of theater.
And what happens when the homeowner sells? How do we make sure the next person
Well,
keeps
if it's deeded, it passes with the property.
Okay. And does anyone read those documents? Do they like go through like, oh, I gotta like make
Well,
sure?
that's the problem then, because the maintenance agreement we just did on the septic, that wasn't deeded to my knowledge. That's just an agreement with the town.
The first one down at Manitou.
As well as what was just sent out today or yesterday for Route 301.
No, that one actually, Max was saying, that's the first one that actually says it's to be added to the deed. That's why I was saying we should make that our standard.
Absolutely. They ought to all, they are, if they're not deeded, they're not appropriate.
Yep. All right, well, I think, sorry.
No, I was gonna say it's kind of a novel idea. It's something that Eric had mentioned to me like years and years ago, and I think that he had seen it on some or read it somewhere. But there are certain communities that have similar boards to the one in Philipstown, like the conservation board, where any project that we end up approving, like big or small, the homeowner would be required to put some sort of monument or plaque describing that this was approved by the conservation board and under X regulation, and it would be, you know, set in stone essentially on the property in some conspicuous area, whether it be in front of a restoration planting area or in front of a project area or tied into the project area, so that for future generations, there's people or, you know, subsequent homeowners, they could see that you know, every time they come out to a certain area, essentially.
Wow.
Yeah, that's
That's a cool picture though.
Yeah.
There's another piece to this, and that's the realtors. And
Right.
educating the realtors and making, you know, I wonder if there's a way that we can do some sort of an education campaign with anybody who is selling real estate or acting as buyer's agent in the town of Philipstown, that you need to, you know, be aware of, you know, of various, you know, we could create some sort of an information packet and also maybe require some sort of a training.
That's a really interesting idea. I
Because
think,
if they know about it, they have to disclose it.
yep. Just like they do with a lot of other aspects of a house, right? Oil
Yes,
tanks and things like that.
Yeah.
yeah.
You all are much more deeply knowledgeable than me, and Max has been helping me catch up to speed. But do other, I mean, I don't know, MJ, if you refer to as a concession, you know, like for example, that pool and Mark, you've talked about this idea of 4-to-1 in terms of added conservation benefit. I wonder if any other municipalities kind of charge any sort of a maintenance fee, you know, for these agreements, or anything that, you know, akin to a concession, some sort of a fee that helps for the cost of having a system that follows up. But
Yeah, Jace, we tried with there was Banker. I mean, you may have heard about the Banker project where there was a large violation of the permit. And in the end, it was, I believe we had made them have a bond, which was going to pay for all the work that was going to go into watching it. But it was only for a short period of time. I don't know, 5 years, something like that, if anybody recalls. But, you know, it's the kind of thing, it seems like if it's a large concession, to Jan's point, that should be in the deed and should be in perpetuity. If you've now created something that is there forever. So until you take it away, you need to maintain it, period. And the money needs to be there for us to, why should everybody, all the taxpayers in the town pay for your concession? Put up the money and.
This is an interesting idea, because what if it's not you pay every year for whatever it is, but what if you pay a percentage of the project cost you have to pay that into a conservation fund, right? Like they do with the, there's that concept of a conservation, like the conservation fund, the tax, the real estate tax. But this would be something slightly different where if you're going to have a project that really kind of pushes the boundaries, then you have to put whatever a percentage of whatever the cost of the project is into this fund so that we can, the town can have the capacity and resources to enforce it.
In Beacon, they actually have, they charge you a small park fee. If your property, for some reason, doesn't have enough open space, then you have to put into the Parks Fund.
That's for, I think that's for development, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Well, I just want to add, I mean, this seems like such an important conversation, if in the future, and I don't know if the Conservation Board does this regularly, but if the Conservation Board has a discussion about proposals or ideas for better enforcement mechanisms, and that seems like a good presentation or something for me as a liaison to the board to bring back, or for you all to present back. I know that conversation is not going to happen now, but it seems so important to kind of make sure that people are following the decisions that this board is doing. So, I mean, I would encourage that in the future. If this conversation goes on, somehow being able to summarize it back to the board and come back and present these ideas to the board.
Absolutely. I mean, in fact, I know that you'll all agree, we've had this conversation innumerable times, and it's just, we hit a dead end. So Jason, any help you can give us in that regard would be greatly appreciated.
Okay.
We need more.
Yeah,
teeth.
I think it's important to frame. I feel like this is a frustration that is very familiar to this board and may not be very familiar to the public at all. So if there's a way that we can kind of frame this discussion so that the other town board members kind of coming from too is going to be critical, I think, to making a lot of these. So I know like we're kind of preaching to the choir here because the conservation board process. I think it's also going to be a messaging thing, Jason, too, to kind of understand, have the remainder of the board understand from a larger perspective what this all means as well, so that the public can buy in, the town can buy in and understand exactly, our frustration.
Agreed, Max. I mean, so on the board with the limited attention span, if the conversation gets to a point where it can be proposed in a fairly clear and straightforward way, I think it would make, I would be very, it would make sense to create space on an agenda for that sort of a proposal and discussion, whether it's in a workshop first or in a town board meeting. But it seems like it's essential to the work the Conservation Board's doing to get it out, to get this discussion out of the Conservation Board and in front of the larger public.
Max, do you think you and I can kind of put together a bullet point list of some of the things we just all talked about and circulate it and let people all add to it? If given that, I'd be happy to go in and make or we can just email it to the board and, via Jason, and here are our thoughts, nice and simple, 6 lines. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it. Sorry,
I'm
Jim,
sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Max.
No, all I was going to say is I think having like a running open document, just so because I think we have a lot of great ideas and the board has a lot of great ideas every time we all get together. I don't want that to get lost either. So maybe having that running open document would be a good idea, and then we can pull from that as a group. I don't want anybody to be left out.
Cheryl, you know what? When you do the minutes on this meeting, if you can manage to focus on this one short section right in here where everybody was kind of throwing in their suggestions, just from that alone, we could probably put that document together.
Sure. Yeah, Jason, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounded like what you were craving is for us to kind of come up with a draft proposal that we could bring to a workshop and then kind of workshop it and sand it down and polish it off.
I think that's right. I mean, I am just the liaison. And so as opposed to always just reporting back on a summary of the decisions, if you gave me a proposal, it's my job to bring it to the board and say, this is a conversation the Conservation Board wants to have. you know, and ask, you know, Richard, if he's still there, whatever the timeline is, you know, how to go about this. Is it a workshop discussion? Is it a, you know, so I would leave that all in your court to say, you know, when it gets to the point where there is, you know, a piece of paper that everybody feels solid about, then to instruct me. Okay, my job is to bring this to the town board, provide a rationale for why this conversation is happening in the conservation board, and get some guidance on how to have that discussion with the town board, and have Mark and Max, you know, present the discussion and the need for this.
Excellent.
Terrific.
And this is probably not at all, you know, probably not feasible, but you know, I'm thinking, so, you know, I don't think the town is ready to say like any new builds, you know, should be just like electric heating and cooling, right? I don't think we're ready to be like hard no on propane and oil heating. But can we have the builder / architects come before one of the boards and explain why they can't go electric? I would like for them to say, no, we can't do heat pumps. We have to do propane, and explain why. Because really, you can and you should be. And I would like to know why builders continue to keep putting in like existing, you know, outdated infrastructure. And so which board could that potentially go before? Would that be planning? Would that be conservation? But I would like for them to explain the rationale for why they can't.
I can tell you in one word, cost. If you compare, you know, a 2,500 square foot house HVAC system with a couple of propane fired furnaces, you're probably $15,000.
Okay.
Where if you did it, a couple of heat pumps, it could be 30,000, 35,000. But you have to do it. There need to be incentives from the state. There need to be federal incentives. You know, a town can help enforce it, as I think. Didn't Beacon just do that? Somebody, I thought I read it in the paper today. They're requiring solar panels of some sort on all new construction, some sort. I mean, that's amazing.
That is amazing. Yeah.
We're going in the right direction.
I think I hear you on cost, and the builders pass it on anyways. It's not like they're taking the hit. But my biggest concern is I talk to people who are building houses, like they're getting a house built and no one brings up heat pumps. Like they don't even ask the client, would you like to have option A, B? It's like, nope, this is what we do. This is how, and they don't present it. So how can someone say no, they don't want it if they're not being told about it?
I mean, I'm going to go down a rabbit hole if I start talking about that.
I'm sorry. I knew I was just like, I just wanted to bring it up because
you know where I'm at with that. I mean, I recommend to every one of my clients, what are you doing with fossil fuels? Heat pumps are the way to go. I mean, it's clean, it's beautiful, it's efficient, it's inexpensive to run. Yeah.
I don't know. We can all go down the rabbit hole. I mean, I like slapping ideas. I mean, I would like to look at the incentives. I mean, if it's not a ban, I mean, expedited, you know, getting your project in an expedited line across the boards, you know, if you are installing X. I mean, I think that is a way to start, but I know we're going to go too far down the rabbit hole if we begin, but.
If you're going to start to talk about fossil fuels, you got to talk about wood burning stoves as well, because there's pollution in small areas. You got 10 people in a small couple of blocks that have a wood burning stove. You go through Continental Village and there's smoke like all winter. People are breathing in all those particles. Sure, it's renewable, but like, you know, what about some scrubbers in the chimneys as in environmental protection? You know, like there's got to be some solution here. You know, I mean, it's cheaper to get the wood burning stove and heat your house that way. I know several people that do it, but you know, all their neighbors pay the price of breathing in the smoke and you smell it in the house. It comes right in the house. So you're breathing it in constantly, you know?
Yeah.
So that's you know, a big source of pollution as well.
All right. Well,
got a lot of things to talk about.
Before we adjourn, I just have one. I know it's getting late, but I just have one question, particularly because I looked through the minutes and I noticed that it definitely did not come before us in July. But are we gonna see Hudson Highlands Reserve again?
I saw that in the paper. Is that true? Oh,
Well, the planning board saw them.
Yeah,
I'm
we
just
need,
at
we need
what-
to see it.
I'm
Sorry,
sorry.
they were in front of planning in July and they're back again this week. But it was just kind of a reintroduction of the project.
I would
Okay,
think
I
they'd
just,
have-
I want to make sure, just for the record, that I brought up that, you know, this project was referred to us in its first iteration. I think it's really important that we don't get bypassed in the consideration of this project in its new iteration in 2.0 Hudson Highlands Reserve, because there are still some lingering issues in the plan, from what I understand, that were concerns for us and things that we had talked about. And the density of the houses has now gone up because the equestrian center is gone. So they're putting houses in place of the equestrian center.
Oh.
So I wonder exactly where those are. Are those on steep slopes? You know, I mean, so, and we haven't been provided with any of the new materials. So I worry that that might happen without us getting another look at it and getting to weigh in on it. And I think it's important. It's the biggest development that this town has seen in more than a decade. So.
Absolutely.
Mark, do you want?
Yep.
Mark, do you want me to draft a memo on behalf of the board to Neil, just
That would
suggesting that, or
Great.
saying that we need
Absolutely.
brought back?
Yeah, tell them we're going to be requiring all heat pumps in all those houses.
Well, why not?
Incentive, you get through the boards a little faster.
Why not?
All right, guys.
Cheryl,
What about the golf course, the Shakespeare Festival? I mean, they're closing this year and they plan on opening next year, but are they ever coming to, I mean, there's lots of wetlands. I mean, maybe they're not gonna do
Yeah,
anything, put up a court, on the 10th hole or something, but put up a tent, but.
Yeah, they as well have been in front every month in planning and continue to be. I'm sure, I would assume they'll be coming to you as well at some point, but still
I'm
got.
surprised we haven't seen them yet, Cheryl.
Yeah.
That's another one.
I don't think they know exactly what they're doing yet.
Yeah,
Yeah, that could be too, yeah. And we don't want to see them until they know what they're doing.
agreed.
And just so you know, the submissions, if you want to look, anything they've submitted to planning is on the website, for the month that they were there. So it's kind of broken down by month. So if you want to take a look, they're very large submissions for both of those. But
Are those things available to the public on the website? I was just.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
why, that's kind of why they're there, hopefully to cut down on FOIL requests.
I didn't realize that. Okay, thank you.
But ideally for Hudson Highlands Reserve and possibly the Shakespeare Festival, it would be good to have a dual meeting again.
Yeah.
So that, we can work together and talk about what our concerns are. And the planning board hears it directly and they can, react.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
and just to keep you guys all informed, I met with the wetlands consultant that was hired for the Shakespeare Festival project, and they had submitted a request for a wetland determination. They had delineated all the wetlands on the property, and I went and checked all the wetland boundaries that they had flagged, and that's the only thing that's come to our side of the equation. So we're still waiting on, I think, the final like packet to be sent to us. And I brought up the fact to that consultant that we haven't really been in the loop on a lot of that work. So yeah, I think it's probably prudent to follow up again with the planning board themselves. But once I think we have determined where the regulated areas actually are based on that determination, then I'm sure they're going to put together a packet for this board, because they are aware that those resources are on the property. So I think, that being said, there are other components of the project that this board would comment on beyond the wetlands permit. So, based on the overlays and just the overall nature of the project itself. So I can write, yeah, I'll draft 2 memos up and then you guys can take a look.
Thank you. Matt.
Thank you, Max.
Sounds like we need a
Cheryl.
CB golf outing this fall before they close, so we can just take a tour.
Yeah, there you go. The last 9 people to play golf on the course.
I'm kidding.
All right, well, it's a pleasure seeing everybody again. I guess, can I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion.
In a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Right.
Yeah, good night, everybody.
Night.
Good night.
Night.